Dutch, I put you in a bad mood straight away because you were talking about that time you wrestled a bodybuilder.
Oh God.
Should we mention that now, or should we save it for
Oh,
another
you can
time?
mention it now. We were talking about Bret Hart, and I said one of the things that I couldn't read Bret's book because he blames everybody else for whatever happened to him. It was never his fault, or it was somebody else trying to screw him, or it was Vince, or it was WCW, it was Goldberg. It was all these things. So I was telling James, I worked with this guy one time, a big bodybuilder that I don't even know how he got into business. He couldn't go more than 5 minutes because he would blow up and he'd be sucking wind. So I told him to make a little bit of a comeback on me, and he was blown up. And he started hammering me with those big arms. He had huge arms. One caught me on this side, one caught me on this side. I don't know why he was just windmilling them. So I took him down. I said, I literally, I was going to choke him out. Like I was going to starve him for air, for oxygen, and he's already blown up. And he was begging me to let him up. So that's why I don't have any faith in any bodybuilders in the ring because they don't go for cardio. They just go for size. And I tell you, another guy who blew up like that was Ultimate Warrior, but he never got over it. He went all through his WWE career still blowing up. He blew up with Hogan at WrestleMania, wherever it was in Montreal. Was that it? When did Hogan wrestle
Toronto
Warrior?
in that WrestleMania.
Oh yeah, he blew up in that, and Sting wasn't so bad. Sting was a little bit not as big, but he'd blow up too. They'd both blow up. So there's a lot of difference between a wrestler in wrestling shape and a bodybuilder in bodybuilding shape. I mean, if you're in wrestling shape, you have good cardio. The bodybuilders don't. So don't even suggest to me that this guy, just because he's got a good body, needs to get into wrestling. No, he needs to stay in bodybuilding and stand up there and pose. That's all he needs to do.
I think this might have been a Bret Hart quote, but I'm sure he said at one point, bodybuilding is just the most tedious sort of full-time activity. And it's also the most useless because apart from looking good, you can't actually do anything with it. You know, you aesthetically look great, but you can't do like any sport basically with it. Like
No,
wrestling, you blow up in 2 seconds.
well, tell me the last time you saw a bodybuilder out playing basketball. No,
Yeah.
you don't. Bodybuilders might be able to play football a little bit, but they can't play basketball or baseball or do any of those things that you got to have free movement of the body. See, actually, there's two guys. Who do you think makes a better wrestler, a football player or a basketball player?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I would actually say NFL player because, you know, there's so, like Ernie Ladd, Bradshaw, so many of them came from that sport.
I would
Explosiveness.
say, okay, I'm going to say it like this. I think a basketball player does because they have to control the body. When they go in for a layup, they got to turn so they don't hit the guy here, there. Football player just creams the crap out of you, but basketball players don't. And how I learned that, Mark Calloway, the Undertaker, was a basketball player. Kane, he was a basketball player, and that's why they were so easy because it came naturally. It came naturally to them because they had control over their bodies. Football players, they don't care about control. They have control one way, and that is to halfway take your head off, which is a no-no in wrestling, or it's at least it's a no-no in my book. So, I played. We used to get these towns early, and there'd be a basketball court there. We'd be in a school or something. We'd ask the coach. He would always be around. Hey, you got a basketball? Yeah, here guys. And we'd start playing. So it was me and a guy named Action Jackson, who was he was a big Afro-American guy from Dallas. And he used to work with Undertaker. He used to work with Mark in a bar. And Mark got him into wrestling. So Mark said, I'll play both you guys. We said, what? You're going to play both of us? He said, yeah. Well, he played both of us. And I'm a crappy basketball player. And I didn't know at the time, but actually Jackson was even worse than I was. And he played both of us and beat us about, I don't know, 18-10 or something. He just killed us. We'd go in there for a layup, he'd block it. We go to shoot, he'd block it because he's 6'10", 6'11". And I never played basketball before. And he never let me forget that. So when you play a guy in his game, you're going to get beat. So where are we coming from today? It's like we're getting in a car, we're making a trip. Why don't we go today from Atlanta to Savannah?
How long's that?
It's about 3.5 hours.
We'll have to do the highlights then.
Yeah, we won't go that long, but it's a good trip to talk on. And I mentioned this before. This is where I learned how to negotiate in the wrestling business, how to politic in the wrestling business. This is how I learned. Everything I know about the wrestling business was sitting in the back seat on these long trips and listen to the veterans and the other guys talk about wrestling. I didn't know nothing about wrestling when I started, really. I just knew a little bit. And then slowly over time, I learned that it is a business. And you know what I didn't know? I didn't know they had an office in like every area of the country. I thought Atlanta and Charlotte and Florida were the only places that had wrestling. I didn't know Texas had wrestling. I didn't know that New York, when I started, I didn't know they had wrestling. Or California, I didn't even know that stuff. One guy told me, he said, "Hey, you want to go to California?" I says, "And do what?" He said, "Wrestle." I says, "They got," I was so stupid. I said, "They got wrestling in California?" He says, "Yeah." He said, "Listen, if you want to go, you just tell me. I'll book you all the way across the country and you can pay your way out there." So, and that's how I learned. Crazy. I hate to even admit that about myself, but I was really, really stupid when I started. I'm a little smarter now, but not that much. So